What do women think after they've had an abortion? You're watching Timeless Talks, timeless subjects, information for life. My research on this subject of abortion consisted of searching all over the internet and finding what people have said and listening to some even on YouTube. What I found is that physically, women who have had an abortion oftentimes have menstrual cramps that are far too strong and last much longer than normal. One lady described it as having menstrual cramps times 1,000. And another one said she had menstrual bleeding for nearly 6 months. Some of the women that I read about described this feeling of loneliness or isolation. It may be because they did not know how to communicate their feelings with other people, and some also related how that this loneliness and this inability to communicate those feelings led to the breakup of the relationship they had had with their male partner. I thought it also interesting that some of the women who had said they did not expect to have any kind of regret, as we talked about in Abortion 2, hope you'll go back and watch that those people now, after the fact, are feeling regret. They feel that they had made a bad decision. Maybe it was from the source of guilt. Maybe it was because of their relationship being destroyed, or because of postpartum blues, similar to what someone would have after they had given birth. One of the ladies described her regret as being so strong that she started burying her grief and this regret in a bottle. She drank lots of beer, lots of all kinds of alcohol, trying to get that feeling of regret to go away. And she admitted it didn't happen. More than one woman described their feelings as that of depression, that they had no energy, they had no drive, they wanted to sleep and lay around all the time, nothing to give them purpose or direction any longer. Despite these four big areas of thought, we need to remind everyone that if these women had been following God's pattern, none of these things, none of them, would have been directly attributed to the abortion. For example, the woman who was having the menstrual cramps and the prolonged periods of bleeding, if they had not had sexual intercourse, she would not have become pregnant. The tissue that she did not want would have been non-existent. There would not have been any of those kind of problems. No direct consequences to bear. Furthermore, if she had been following God's plan of no sexual intercourse, possibly with someone who was not their husband, they would have been someone who would have had been knowledgeable that they're following God's plan. And there wouldn't have been any kind of pregnancy. They wouldn't have been having any physical pain, no long-term physical problems, if they had just followed God's plan. And that particular matter cannot be overstated. We're not trying to create guilt. We're trying to get a good, clear understanding where these people are. Not to condemn, but to realize. Everything that we decide in this life comes from one of two sources. And that's all there are. Now you may think there's thousands, but there's only two. One of them happens to be God. And if it is something that will lead to something good and positive and hope and refreshing, it must be from God. God only gives good things. But the second thing is this. If it is not good, if it's even gray looking, it is probably coming from Satan or those who follow Satan. And Satan is all about trying to confuse you and lead you down a wrong path that is self-destructive. God told us something great over in Jeremiah chapter 10, verse 23. This is what he said. I know, O Lord, that the way of man is not in himself, that it is not in man who walks to direct his steps. I'm suggesting to you that possibly God is using all these bad feelings, the depression, the anxieties, the ideas of loneliness, the idea of physical problems, that God is using any or all of those to try to get us to come toward Him and to change what we have been doing. In God's way, there's good things. You don't have to worry about the loneliness or the isolation. The concept of regret, well, it might be there for a little while, but God can take care of that. And the idea of using alcohol to try to escape it is totally not necessary. Depression is rare because people have purpose and goals that lead them to good things. So if we pick up our Bibles and we start reading in Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and we find out about this man Jesus, that he really is God's Son, we're going to be listening to him, and we will come to that conclusion that he is who he says he is, God's Son. And since he's God's Son, I will pay even more attention to him, and I will work hard to change my life to whatever he has said. Not only will I be working toward those changes in my life, away from all those ill things that abortion people have to deal with, but I also look toward him and I start acknowledging his ways are the right ways. And since I'm just following him instead of trying to direct my own paths, then what I wind up doing was I will allow myself to be immersed in water to have my sins forgiven. And that is what God promises. Many different places. If you'd like to have the scriptures that goes with these things, I'd be glad to send them to you. All you're going to need to do is use the contact page over on timelesstalks.net. But furthermore, once we have gotten into this thing and we have been forgiven, then all the bad things that are associated with an abortion, God, he forgets them. He completely throws them out of his own mind. It's like he says he has removed them as far as the east is from the west. Sin is not remembered by God. He has forgiven you. And he has given you a new slate and a new purpose and a new goal. And all these things are combined to bring us out of this pit that abortion or any other mistake can leave us in. We get to recover when we start listening to God and following what he tells us to do. And he has told us over in 1 John chapter 1, beginning about verse 6 or 7, he starts telling us how that as long as we keep trying to do his ways, he will continue to forgive our sins and to keep us healthy. And he keeps us with purpose, and his grace covers us, and his mercy flows, and we get to have the great life that God desperately wants you to have. So here's what I'm going to suggest to you. Number one, if you'd like to have some scriptures that relate to this, please use the contact page and get with us. We will be glad to supply you with any information you might need. Second, if you would like to have prayers privately dealt with, please use the prayer request page over at timelesstalks.net. Thank you for watching, and until next time, may the good Lord take a liking to you. Goodbye for now.